Let me just maybe start with some kind of remarks at the beginning about this idea or this topic of media and empowerment. I'm very happy that Anna Ramella asked me to moderate such a panel, because I feel media and empowerment are topics that very much lie at the heart of a lot of contemporary societal debates now about representation, about equality. If we think, for example, about the underrepresentation of minorities at the Oscars or in state television, I feel this is actually a topic, that is very, at the heart of contemporary debates. And I feel that these debates actually also have to be had, as most people really experience contemporary reality in a mediated form, no? Like media really, particularly now during this pandemic, as we were all kind of glued to our screens, no? Kind of media is kind of the primordial means how we experience outside reality, and in that way media really shape our life worlds and our realities. And I feel that visual anthropology actually has a very long tradition now of thinking about these questions, how to give voice to our research participants, how to arrive at collaborative forms of filmmaking. And I hope we can discuss this a bit today, what anthropology can actually contribute to these contemporary debates. So as I said, I would like to make a quick round with 3 individual questions I have about your respective projects, and then kind of enter a discussion with all of you. And I would love to start with Tera and your project, because I feel that your film and your research project actually engage with a methodology that has a lot to do, obviously, with empowerment, and that has a very long tradition also. No, if you think of like Paulo Freire, Theater of the Oppressed, Theater for Development. Maybe you can start out by telling us a bit about how you came to work within this tradition, and maybe also what your specific take or contribution to this like long academic tradition is.
This project was initiated at the University of Bergen in Norway, and it was a bigger project on sexual and reproductive health, which was in not only in Ethiopia, but in Tanzania and Zambia as well. The project leaders kind of thought that they would utilize that I have a visual background. So they said, try to explore something around film. And I've also read a bit about this kind of projects with drama or edutainment dramas, which has also a long tradition in Latin America, but also in, I've been watching Soul City edutainment dramas from South Africa. And I kind of related more to this kind of tradition than actually visual anthropology in this project, because I thought if we really want to empower young people, and we want them through that empowerment to be able to actually take control of their own sexual and reproductive health, then it's not just enough to tell them. We kind of have to work with them. And that engaging them in issues related to sexual and reproductive health. So I guess as I said, it's not like participatory project where kind of the participants are defining what we're going to make a film about. It was more like I had kind of an assignment. And try to involve them in that assignment. But when it comes to kind of writing the scripts for these different dramas, which became 5 in the end, it was also that I felt they had, as a starting point, they also had very little knowledge about sexual and reproductive health. So it was kind of difficult for them to actually write a drama about something they didn't know so much about. So I felt I had to kind of steer the dramas a bit more than I had thought before I I started because it was important that it was correct information in these dramas that relates to the Ethiopian context, what is legal in that context, and what is available in that context. And also that these dramas also should kind of challenge a bit gender roles. I mean, because some of the participants, they said, oh, the girls have to be like this to be within the cultural norm, and the boys have to be like this to be in the cultural norm. So I thought it was important also to kind of push them a bit. So I kind of steered these dramas more than I had anticipated in the beginning. I don't know if anyone of you have seen these dramas, because they are on YouTube, on my YouTube channel. They are called Choices and Consequences, which is 4 episodes. And then the last film we made, then the last year of the 3 years, then the young people kind of took more control over the whole process. Then we had also done film training in the meantime. So they were writing the scripts, and they were doing the filming, and I helped them also with the editing. But I was part of it, but it was like their film more than the first 4.
Yeah, you just one question. You just described that it basically wasn't your initial agenda. That, like, can you describe a bit who set the agenda? Like, kind of what information on like reproductive health should be included in the project, and how did you navigate that with, I don't know, with your own perspective, with your own objectives, with your own thinking about these topics, and also kind of the local moral and legal context? I feel this sounds to me like a minefield. Maybe you can explain a bit how you navigated this terrain.
When I say the project was defined from Norway, it was like it should be about sexual and reproductive health, and it should be about contraceptive use and safe abortion. So that was kind of I mean, I could do whatever I wanted within that parameters. So it was not like somebody in Norway said you have to make a film like this or that. It was like more like it has to include contraceptives, and it has to include something about abortion, because abortion is actually allowed in Ethiopia for instances. So it's kind of a progressive in the relation to sexual and reproductive health. What I thought, where I actually pushed people, was on power and gender issues, because these kind of things come into sexual and reproductive health. I mean, I mean, to be able to negotiate safe sex, for example. I mean, it's all these kinds of things. So. And also sexual harassment, all these kinds of issues, which is related to sexual and reproductive health. So we had kind of one theme in each film. So I was never afraid of pushing them. I mean, I was not just accepting when they say girls have to be like this. I was not accepting that. But I said, okay, so how can we, I mean, if there are other voices, we can kind of include that as other voices in the film. And none of these films come with a conclusion about what these young people should do. They are trying to raise questions and initiate reflection. And that was actually also one thing that the young people didn't like, because they would like to have a conclusion in each film. And I said, no, you have to reflect on these issues and find out what you think is the right thing to do. You have these options. This is what is available. And how would you navigate in that terrain if it was in practice?
I think my next question directly connects to this. I've myself never worked with these methods, but I was always fascinated by it, because I feel it must be super rewarding, no? Because it's so hands-on. And from your perspective, what would you say the notion of empowerment, what did it mean in your specific context? Like, did you really perceive like tangible outcomes or some kind of beginning societal change as a result of your work?
Well, when it comes to societal change, I'm not sure, but what was kind of beyond my expectation was that these dramas were so well received in the local community because we are actually pushing on the norms. And we were traveling we made cinemas in different villages. So we traveled in this district of North Ethiopia and had screenings in the evenings. They were also put on YouTube in the local language. So they have quite a lot of views on YouTube as well. But what came actually was beyond kind of my expectation was that these young people actually continued to work with film afterwards, not necessarily on sexual and reproductive health, but what came out of this project was a very, very lively drama, dance, and film club, which involved a lot of youth in that local community in North Ethiopia. So that was kind of, it kind of moved me to tears in a way, because they took it in a way. They have not made any films on sexual and reproductive health, but they are working creatively with film and drama and theater, and that is.
No, I think this energy was really like tangible in the film that
What is the tragedy of this is that after we finished 1 year after this project was finished, 2018-19, no, 2 years afterwards, there is now a war in this region in Ethiopia. So that means they cannot work. The house they had been able to acquire has been taken for food storage. I mean, I just hope they will manage to hold on to this through these trying times, but it can last for a long time. So what actually stopped it was war. A really devastating war in North Ethiopia. I know that they are still alive, but that's basically what they have now. So I hope some of that creativity that they got their own feeling about is kind of helping them also through these trying times. But it was actually beyond my expectation that they would actually take it and create such a vibrant milieu in their own right afterwards, after the project was finished.
Yeah.
So
thank you very much. To continue now around Carl, I would have some questions for you now. Carl, you hear me, no? Carl, the film you made is a very fascinating film about practices of fantasy. And what I would like to know first is, do you feel what your protagonists are doing, like constructing these elaborate fantasy worlds, is this something empowering, or is this something rather regressive because it's so much like kind of withdrawing from like actual lived reality? Was that even a question for you making this film?
Absolutely. And it's a great question, actually, because of course, the main theme is that drawing and reading shorta is actually empowering. Of course, now I have zoned in on a certain demographics or a certain group of readers who all identify as gay men and who use shorta in order to sort of go back and reclaim their childhoods and boyhoods and growing up to relive a better version of them. That's what I could relate to myself. But at the same time, we have Zach, who is the main protagonist of the film, who I think that everyone who watches the film senses that he is not really happy, and he is actually diverging into otaku realm, so to speak.
Or about how stressful ordinary reality is, no?
Sorry?
He talks a lot about how stressful ordinary reality is.
Exactly. And he talks about how he is tempted by the hikikomori, the people who sort of withdraw from society. And when he watched the film, he said that he didn't recognize himself. He loved the film very much, but he said that you managed to capture me at a time, and that Zach doesn't exist anymore. And that was very positive, because now he had dared to download a gay dating app, and he was about to go on a date and so on. So we actually...
Anything to do with your filmmaking, with this process of making?
Maybe. Yeah, that's a good question, because he is also a very interesting research participant, in the sense that he was very happy to meet us by chance, basically, at the Shota event, me and my cinematographer, Solomon McConnell. And we spent a lot of time together. And for Zach, the importance of that was that he could articulate things that he had thought about a lot. And maybe that contributed to him realizing things about himself, or being a catalyst, at least, who knows.
I loved how you integrated yourself into the film. Can you talk a bit about how you arrived at this decision of making your personality and your positionality, and also your past, such an important part of the film?
Well, it was, of course, a process, and it took a lot of thought, actually, before I decided to integrate myself in the film. But my supervisor, who was Dr. Andy Lawrence, he had recommended me from the start to save up, to film in a way that would make it possible to include myself in the film. And partly it's a technical decision, because since all my research participants are anonymous, it becomes frustrating after a while to never see a face in a movie. So we have Hatta-san of Alice Books, who sort of represents some kind of authority. He's not a Shota fan himself. And then we have me, and maybe the audience can somehow relate. Maybe I can be some kind of bridge between my research participants and the audience by, maybe the audience as well can start thinking about their pasts, and what the ideal outcome of their pasts would be. So something along those lines. But it was also very emotional for me to actually hear Zach sit there and talk about his past, and realize that this is not so unlike me, despite we come from totally different countries and we are different generations and all that.
No, I think that worked super well, kind of having you as this cultural translator, because on a first glance, this world looks so alien to us. So but you really made it relatable. And I think a lot of the power of the film actually comes from that. Staying with the topic of power and empowerment, is this idea of empowerment something you wanted to achieve with this film? Did you have any ideas of the impact you wanted the film to have, on the lives of your research participants, or on your audience? Is that something you thought of?
Well, that's a hard question. I mean, what I basically wanted was that I wanted to understand an experience, how my research participants experience desire, because it is a very controversial topic, not in Japan necessarily, but in many parts of the world, to be sexually attracted to a fictional character, which represents some kind of, or maybe not represents, but which looks like a child or a boy. So I wanted to understand that experience, and I was actually quite worried that I didn't want to come into this with my own preconceptions or the prejudices of the world that I live in. So I didn't want to make a political film, actually. Now, this comes in naturally anyway, partly because Zach is not Japanese. He doesn't want to reveal where he comes from, but he is part of the Western culture, you could say, has watched the same American shows as I have. And so he brings that up about feeling shame, feeling that the outside world doesn't understand him or what this is about. And I think that after all, I did this at a German university, and I even had to seek legal counseling. That's what my supervisor advised me, because what I would do might be illegal, actually, because it might be caught by child porn legislation. So since I am at a German university, in a way, it was not bad to bring in this political angle as well, but to do it a little bit in an maybe activist way, that they can, that my protagonists can explain a little bit about that it's more complicated than at first glance, maybe.
Mm-hmm. Thank you very much, Carl.
Yeah, thank you.
Zeynep, I have some questions for you as well. Zeynep, I really liked your film, but I have to admit, I go bathing naked a lot, so I couldn't like really immediately identify with the conflict or the drama in your film. But it was so well crafted that it really immersed me in this drama, and I think this has a lot to do with your dramatic voiceover narration. And I found this actually really fascinating because we are so used to an objective or neutral voiceover narration in documentary film. How did you develop this idea? Or how did you arrive there with this text?
Okay, first of all, thank you very much. Actually, it goes back to the feelings of my supervisor, because when I talked about the idea of doing something on this issue, she said to me that, I'm sorry, Zeynep, but this is not interesting. This is not a drama. But there are lots of women in Turkey experiencing this thing, I said. But then she said, I don't understand. If you have a good shape, fit body, you can go out of the sea and show off with your body. So you can even flirt with some boys around, and that's okay. I said, no, it is not something related to the shape of her body, but something which is in her mind, which is her respect, promise, and belief, whatever you call. But I just wanted to visualize this thing, not just to access her world. So I had to go back to her and made interviews again and again for about a year. And then we prepared a text together and asked the text to 10 people from 10 different nationalities. So can you identify with the character? Can you understand the drama, the tension in this film? And when I got confirmation from all of them, then I went back to my supervisor and said, now, is it okay? And she said, yes, now I can understand what she is experiencing. And then actually, I would prefer to have her voice in the film because it's a documentary. And for me, it was the anchor point, which was attaching it to the reality. Because if you look at the film, there is a voiceover, there are drawings, and there is some found footage, stock footage. So you can question the reality of the film. In Turkey, there are lots of debates. They ask me, is it a documentary? So where is the reality point? Where is the reality reference of this film? Whatever. So I asked her if she can do the voiceover, but she rejected because she's the other of the other of the other. She's like a Kurdish Muslim activist, feminist journalist, veiled woman who cannot find any job, and if she is the Shepherd. So we had to find someone else, and it was her interpretation, the artist's interpretation, to have that dramatic tone. After the screening, my character came and told me, I'm not that dramatic person. Why do you do that in this way? So yeah, I hope it answers your question.
Yes, it definitely does. My second question would be, to be honest, I don't know too much about like kind of the Turkish societal and political context, and the little I get from like kind of the news media here is that I think particularly in Istanbul there is quite a conflict between like kind of secular parts of the society and the religious parts of your society. I don't know like where you side yourself in this conflict, but what I would be interested in, do you feel by like trying to create empathy for this woman, or for this like problem that maybe someone from the secular part of society wouldn't necessarily have? Was that for you also a way to like kind of intervene in such a conflict that is going on in your own society?
I mean, it's a very difficult question. In Turkish context, I believe there is no white and black. You can be a religious person, you can pray, and also you can drink alcohol at the same time. This is an average Turkish person is always in this kind of discussions, and intervening is like it's like something advantages or disadvantages for you, but it is something like a reflexive thing. I mean, I just wanted to show there are these stories in Turkish context, and people are constantly negotiating with the police, with the state, with the religion, with all the authorities, and with their own feelings. It is always a negotiation process. So I just wanted to show her questioning this process.
Okay. My last question would be about the visual aesthetics of your film that are sometimes bordering on the abstract, we can say. Do you see your work somehow drawing also upon this tradition of like the non-representational in Islamic art? You know, like I kept thinking of this Lara Marx book about like kind of digital arts and like kind of traditional Islamic art. Is that something that was an inspiration for you, or not at all?
Again, this is a very good question and very good parallelism. Thank you very much. Actually, I wanted to have something moving from outside to inside, moving from outside world, an introduction part, to the real footage, then to the inner process of her, to, again, as I said, to access to her feelings. But the moment you put the camera, you put the footage of these people in public, the camera becomes a male gaze. So there is no way that you can represent them in their real shape. So I had to find a way to both metaphorically, symbolically, and literally approach to represent them, not represent literally, but it's just the approach. So yes, it's in water marbling. The artist makes something and waits for the destiny to there is no expectation, and each art piece is unique in that sense. So her experience is unique, and both of them is written on the water. It's about water, it's about swimming, both of them are about destiny. So this parallelism was very surprising, very motivating for me. And I didn't want to figuratively describe everything on the screen. I mean, I just wanted to give some freedom to the audience to imagine what is happening to her. And so that was my aim. And but I had many difficulties because it's this water marbling, to be honest, water marbling area is like a mafiatic kind of structure, and it is very difficult to have an access into that society, because when I went them, if they can, for example, draw a mermaid on the water or something different than this tulip flower, they said no, we are not allowed to do this. You should go and ask blah, 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 this person and that person and that person. So it was 2.5 months to reach the person who has the both the knowledge and the permission, the consent to do something other than tulip. So I wasn't knowledgeable about this area, and I will never go into that area again, but it was for me a strange experience as well. So yeah.
Super interesting.
Was it? Thank you so much.
Isil, I would like to continue with you. Your film, Barbershop, reminded me very much about contemporary debates in anthropology and film studies about the multisensory capacities of the medium of film, how film can speak to the other senses and allow for synesthetic experiences. Can you talk a bit about your film's relationship to theory, if there is any?
Sure, but it's not only my film. It's
that would be my next question.
But maybe I'm contextualize it a little bit because it's all about that. Actually, it was made in Belgrade during the visual anthropology workshop. So we arrived there and we made this film in 1 week. So we found our partners, interview partners, and then also edited there. So basically, that was in that context. And me, I'm very interested in sensory ethnography. Also, I'm making my PhD with sensory ethnographic methods. So basically, yes, it's had a lot to do with that, but it also had a lot to do with this limited time. And so we had to concentrate on the brief moments, and basically then you can enrich your project with this rhythms and other than human voices and so on and so forth. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, you already mentioned it was a highly collaborative project. A lot of directors, a lot of protagonists. Maybe you can elaborate a bit more about how you work together, how you collaborated with your research protagonists, what kind of an influence they had on how they would be presented on the film.
Yeah. So basically we went there and then we had for 3 days some theoretical courses on visual anthropology, and then we started to present our own project ideas. And my idea was to shut in this barber shop because he was the first person I have met in Belgrade, and I thought it's a fixed space so people are entering and going out, so I could spend some time there. And my 2 colleagues, Joyce and Victoria, they wanted to do a project about the LGBTQI scene in Belgrade. And Pia, she wanted to make something about Fridays for the Future. She her thematic project was not involved in our film, but she was then our protagonist also. She's the one who is getting a very short haircut. And then 2 other protagonists, they are actually the organizers of this visual anthropology workshop. So basically we worked with autoethnographic methods also to involve more and in this very short time. And Milica and Decadanza, we found them also through the assistance of this workshop. So basically it was really short time, but we really tried to kind of personalize it. My concerns were mostly in the representational niveau, because I'm kind of very afraid in this modes of representations, especially bringing so many people together. It could also go really wrong, I think. So basically that was most about the building this kind of flat hierarchy and representing the experiences on this flat level, kind of the same level.
So your film is about transformation, no? And as you just mentioned, you work with various subcultural research participants from the LGBT scene. And particularly when you think of this community, there's a lot of kind of debates, or like there's a lot of like kind of new representations now, if we think of like new Netflix shows, but also these accusations of pink washing. What is your personal take on this question of how the medium of film can be politically transformative in such a context?
Yeah, I think like when representing the other or yourself, as I said, I'm really kind of careful with these approaches, because even like autoethnographic works, they can also go very wrong. But I cannot really kind of make a media analysis of how Netflix series work or so and so forth. But for me, it is really important that, for example, our participants watched the film and they were happy about it. And as they performed, they were also feeling a very like kind of free, and they didn't have problems with the camera. And this moment of filming is very important for me. So basically, I think the film as an end product, it has their own life, and they are shown somewhere else. People will read it somehow differently. But I'm happy that kind of like all our collaboration there went very well with our.
But like, did you discuss this like sensory approach with them, or did they have any impact on like kind of the representation or how on the images you make of them?
Yeah, basically, yes, because we were really close to them. Like it
obviously, yeah, but did you talk about it before?
Yeah. So basically, we had to kind of create this, like intimacy, because this is the camera, and I was almost touching their skins with the camera. And also this technical decision was like, okay, it was like poetical, but also my colleagues, for example, they never filmed. When you asked about empowerment, I also thought it was empowering for my colleagues, for example, also to shoot with the camera, because it is not a very giving experience. It also makes you afraid to go and approach to a person and with a camera. So basically it was, and maybe we were so close to them, or we didn't also have this live voices during the shooting. So we were making like jokes and talking and like saying other things, and you could see only parts. So it was kind of a very lively event in a way, in that way.
Okay, thank you very much. Paula and Michal. My first question to you would be, your film is about empowerment, let's say in a very literal sense, no? Like, how did you find your protagonists, and what drew you to this particular story?
Well, we're trying to be like sharing the answers here, but I'm going to start this one by saying that it comes from, as it is stated in the end of the film, it comes from my research from during the master's in social anthropology, and it was actually the goal was never to end up with a film about them. But it sort of came after interacting for a year, basically, together with them inside their house. And I was studying the local music practices and how they would actually attribute significance to it in their daily lives, like a way to music as a means towards making it, towards being successful, towards changing their neighborhood reality. So it was basically focused on their vision on what music was and what music meant, and especially in their environment. So in some scenes, we kind of let it show without being very specific about it, but they are always referring to the violent context and what is it like to live in a dangerous neighborhood, because the peripheric zone, it's very dangerous. And for the kids to be there, it's better for them to be studying, doing music or playing football or doing something, but not being, having time to spare is like not a good thing, as they see. So So then when we were talking about this in our research group, we thought that it could be a nice thing to film. And I guess after we decided that as another way to be in the field, also they started to actually feel important in themselves. They were, sometimes they would come to us and say, "Oh, I feel like I'm in a reality show." So they started to feel somewhat empowered in that sense that they were interesting for the camera. You know, they like to feel interesting, and I guess that's the subtleness is present in the film in the way that they are very comfortable, because we had already built this relationship of trust, but they were also feeling flattered to be filmed. So I guess that's another thing, that it was a turnout in the end, because this I wasn't expecting.
Your film is very observational and very unobtrusive, I would say. And in that sense, it's almost the antithesis of like overtly political, or overtly engaged filmmaking, no? Can you talk a bit about why you chose such an approach, and maybe also who you made this film for, what you wanted to achieve with that film?
No, you can go.
Right. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if it's observational. It looks a little bit like observational. It's definitely not as Tierra's film, which is like literally collaborative. It comes out of a collaborative project, but suddenly this kind of intimacy and collaboration with the participants existed before the filming started, and that you can see, because obviously, like, the film is very it's a long film, it's a feature film, but we only shot it in like 15 days. But then that's kind of like very difficult to do for a feature film if you don't have this relationship built for a very, very long time. Like Paula has been there, going to the house like every day for 6 months. And when I came in the project, I was, arms open there. So when we started shooting, the research was already done. We have done some interviews and everything, but we didn't want to do interviews because we were actually aiming to look at this sensory relationship between the musicians, music making, ways of living in a house, ways of playing together. So we ended up observing, we ended up being there, watching things happening as they unfolded on real life, let's say. But we are interfering. They're playing with us. Sometimes they're joking with us as a crew. They are singing "Happy Birthday" in English because I was there as a foreigner. And, I don't see it as necessarily as a standard observational approach. Also, I don't think that maybe collaboration has been seen in visual anthropology as some sort of a salvation of this kind of the Western gaze and everything else. But I think that it might be a little bit forced when you just take these ways of filmmaking as aesthetic approaches to what you want to achieve. I don't think it's an observational film which is informed by anthropological research and intimacy. I don't think it's something that takes you out of this kind of empowerment game. It lands you right there in the middle of it, and then the way you look, it's very important for the way you kind of look together with other people.
I think one thing I would add is that I think there is a huge discussion about that, especially with the whole rise of social movements as here in Brazil, especially, but we are talking about people that they are not organized in any way, and they are not claiming politically anything. So how forced would it be to just put it on their mouths, or to just put it as their speech when it's our speech? But instead, I guess we chose together to let show some contradictions, but also where they stand, and that is the most common experience in people who deal with vulnerability and poverty, is that they're just trying to make their living. They are not in any sides of the spectrum, but they are faithful to what they believe in. So we wanted to show this sort of fragility, but also amazing dignity and amazing power that these people have to keep on going and to do beautiful things. So I guess that in the end, it is very empowering, but it's not a statement that we wanted to put from the beginning. It was built during the film.
My last question would be, you don't show so much outside context about life in Fortaleza and about the other institutions there. I imagine there's also churches or NGOs that kind of want to have an impact on the lives of people there. Can you talk a bit about the specific role of the Cruz Family Project against the backdrop of all the other actors who might seek to empower the local population?
Yeah, actually, they are an NGO. They started doing it. They started doing this in their house, just improvising it, like just getting together and doing some classes. They didn't even have that structure. Their house was just a big room, and they wouldn't have all that structure. But then a television show went to reform it, and they shot it, and they did the house. So it's like a very much media exploited. And I guess that's also something that we should talk about. How these people that are dealing with poverty and vulnerability, they are sort of attracting mediatic eyes to that sort of put this other gaze of, look how they did it, look how different they are from the rest of them that are poor and also violent, and also, but no, these are good kids because they play classical music. So it's always the same kind of discourse. We wanted to break it a little bit and just show that they are all of these kids are kids, and they are just there, and you shouldn't take their subjectivity out of it. But yeah, they have a strong relationship with evangelical background, although it's not a thing that is in the sense of an institution. It's a background. It's their background. So they are always referring to it. Although it is not inside the project, it is something in their, I guess, in their values and morals. Yes.
I guess it coexists together. We didn't feel that was a point to make in the film because it didn't show up too much in their daily lives. So basically we left that, but the whole context is there, like the crime, the marks on the wall of each crime organization that claims a street or another street. There's a war going on, it's like it's really complicated. And of course there's other NGOs and other let's say structures that are trying to resist that. And in a way it is a story of resilience, but definitely it's a story about the love for music and the passion for music, and the fact that this practice kind of in daily life takes them away from all these other realities and influences.
Thank you very much. Maybe before we start with my roundtable questions, maybe there is questions about the individual projects, either from our audience. You can like write us here in the Zoom chat, or you can also write us on Vuva. I have the Q&A or the chat field also open there. Or maybe you as filmmakers have questions about each other's projects. I don't know. I just wanted to give some space for questions that are about the particular projects.
I would actually have one question for all of you. I really enjoyed your films, like in different levels. So thank you very much for that. And I have like small questions. Should I?
Yeah, go for it.
For example, I was very curious, Tara. Like, I really like this approach that, like, there are the films and then the afterlife, and you're talking about the participants are talking about and elaborating them. And I was asking myself, how did you choose this black and white in this initial films? They are black and white, right? No? Okay, it's only in the film you show it like that. Okay.
Yeah, it was a kind of to separate the film and the interviews. Okay. I mean, this film was kind of instead of writing a report from the project, it was like, let's have them, let them speak, and let us see them, and then have these small cutouts from the dramas. Yeah.
Should I continue with my questions?
Go for it.
Okay, I was also very curious about the camera person in your film, Carl, because you were kind of like, there were always intimate conversations, and there was this like kind of other person. I wonder if you can say something about that.
Absolutely. The cinematographer is Solomon McConnell, who went to the same program as me at Freie Universität Berlin, the MA in Visual and Media Anthropology. Yeah, and we were I was in Japan once on my own and the second time with him. And I think the initial plan was that I would film a little bit more, but once I sort of migrated towards the side in front of the camera, he became the main cinematographer. And I think that the main challenge with that was to film in a way that was anonymizing, because we were quite clear that we did not want to pixelate faces of the main protagonists, or to change their voices or anything like that. So he had to film under a table or whatever. Yeah, and I think it worked out in a way that all participants felt very comfortable with, actually. Mm.
Do you have more questions, Isil?
Okay. So can I go?
Yeah, go.
Okay. First of all, thank you very much for giving us this opportunity to meet the very creative directors of wonderful films. I'm glad that I had the chance to see all of them. And I really wonder, after watching the films again, this is a very personal question that I never found the answer that satisfied me. So personally, how do you think about the separation, the difference between visual anthropology practice and documentary filmmaking? Because when I was doing my field works and filming for my PhD, which was in documentary filmmaking, one of my anthropologist friends said, "Hey, you are doing visual anthropology. Are you aware of this?" But then when I applied for anthropology conferences, they were like, you haven't studied anthropology, so how can you theorize? How can you put your theoretical framework in this issue? And because, I mean, for me, if you ask me, in its basic sense, I mean, both of them do the same thing, but can you name any difference between these two practices, or how can you differentiate these two areas? Or are you in a kind of vicious circle like me?
Can we start? I don't know if somebody was.
I'm probably going to say something else.
Yeah, probably. I hope. I hope. But I think that we're used to having this discussion a lot. So I think it's a very, you're not alone in that. But I think it comes from a paradigm towards the relationship that is held between the documentarist, the filmmaker, and the subject and the interlocutors. So I guess one thing that I genuinely think is that, and I guess it also answers the question that we were asked and we forgot to answer, which is to whom was this film made for? And I guess that's the answer to this question is most of the times the answer to your question, I think, because I did my film. I guess it was a way to show them what the research that I've been doing with them all these times was about. So in a way, I think it was somehow a way to, instead of, they wouldn't ever want to read my dissertation, but they love to watch a film about them and how I was looking at them and how I was building this story about them and with them. So it's when they finally understood their place in my practice, that it was an anthropological practice, an anthropological interest. And we ended up with a documentary about them. But then it goes beyond the documentary in a way, you know, and I am not serving a question or a purpose as a product, but mostly a relationship that is built there. But that's my take. I guess Mihai has another one.
Not necessarily. I mean, I agree. I just remember this question that I had some years ago. I was at this workshop in Switzerland with another friend, anthropologist, Alberto Gerosa. He's working with film as well. And we were debating the same thing about like documentary, visual anthropology, what is it, what? And we were staying all night, you know, talking intensely. And at some point we went to talk to Peter Crawford about it. So what do you think as a professor in visual anthropology? Please tell us your opinion. And he said something really interesting. Like, he said like, well, you have to choose your alibi. I mean, it can be, you can be a visual anthropologist, you can be a documentary filmmaker, you can be a fiction filmmaker. That's fine. You just choose your alibi and play with it. Because I don't think that there's like very major differences between all this, even fiction.
Yeah. But I think
it goes back to the way you choose to make a film and how to deliver a story. You know?
I think there is this ethical thing about an ethnographic film, an anthropological film, that I don't think it's a premise to every documentary, you know? And I guess that
but
is
not
embedded
also to
in the
every
relationship.
Visual anthropology project.
No, I know, but I think it's desirable in a way. It is how you differentiate the processes also. How do you involve and engage with interlocutors in a way with your characters? So the anthropologist is a lot concerned with it. It's not like documentaries are not, but it's like it's the center of our concerns. How to engage with interlocutors, how to engage with characters, how to share this with them, how to make it a little bit closer to what they want to say and not what we want to say. So in a sense, I guess that is like a different it's a different perspective on what the product is going to look like also. But I mean,
I think it's also a matter of.
And we want to talk.
I just want to finish because I think it's a way of looking at the means of production. I'm going back to Marxist theory, but how do you make the film? What's the context of producing that? And sometimes I think we reflect little upon this issue of like, who's financing, if we're part of an industry, if we're part of a research group, if we have this intention of, doing research and adding film to it, or doing research through film. I think these are really important things to think about. Thank you. Sorry.
Yeah, I think also maybe these kind of barriers or borders are also kind of dissolving more and more. I don't know. I would kind of also add art to this too. I mean, you said documentary, visual anthropology. You could also say that art could kind of also come into it in some way or other. I mean, I'm a trained photographer, so I'm kind of trained outside as a visual person outside anthropology. And when I kind of entered anthropology, I thought they were kind of very strict about what was kind of allowed to be called visual anthropology. I mean, not use too much conventions, not speed up too much. I mean, all these kinds of things which you would probably do in another kind of because you, it was an intention to kind of show it off as research. I mean, that it kind of is your alibi is research in a way, and then to kind of make it more objective, kind of making it more observational. But I think these kinds of things are kind of dissolving. I mean, the art and anthropology thing that has also risen over the last 15 years or so. I mean, and I think if we really want to have an impact with the films or the visual material we make, I think we should use what we have. But it's important to kind of also reflect on why we are doing the things we are, and that maybe some of those choices are transparent in a way. So from my point of view, I'm kind of with one foot in each camp in a way, or in all the three camps, because I'm also an artist. So it's like, I think we should really use what we have to make an impact with the anthropology we want to make, or the visual anthropology we want to make. And I mean, also a documentary, you could make a documentary on the participants' premises. I mean, that is not necessarily a premise that is only for anthropology. You could do the same with a documentary film, but yeah.
This point you make of impact, that actually leads a bit to this first roundtable question I had in mind, and maybe we can connect this a bit, because what I was really interested in, like thinking about like kind of the topic of this panel, is in what ways visual anthropology can actually empower our research participants. No, and I think there's the level of education or collaboration, like the making of the film, that is very present, Tera, in your project. But obviously, there's also the level of representation. No. There's also the dimension of outreach. So, but there also remains the question: is empowerment actually something we as anthropologists or as social sciences should actually aim for? Anthropology is one of these few social sciences that has this tradition of like kind of an engaged practice. And I would really like to know, like following your experience or your projects, what your ideas were making these projects or making future projects maybe as well. Or maybe how is like the local impact in terms of education or collaboration? How is this maybe linked with the more global impact of representation? Or is this two different things? Or is this, are these actually things you thought about making your projects? big question, I know.
Well, go ahead, Isel. Okay. I just wanted to say that I missed the first half of the question. I was away. But no, I think that for Shota fans in Japan, they are not a community. They know very little about each other. So that's why I was contacted by many of them who wanted to be part of this, but they partly wanted that because they wanted to know how other Shota fans think about Shota. I showed the film to a couple of game makers, programmers who have made the game that features in the film also. And they got back to me and they had no idea that that people had these thoughts about Shota, but it made sense for them. So in that sense, I guess I have sort of a purpose to spread more knowledge about a phenomenon that to the people who actually engage in it.
Isil?
Yeah, I just wanted to say that I do not see myself in the position of empowering anybody, for example. Also in Barber Queen, I think the people are already very empowered, and maybe that's why mediating empowerment is good. Like it goes through your camera, but I do not necessarily give the empowerment. It's just like a medium maybe, and giving the space and the voice. And also the question about like visual anthropology and documentary filmmaking. We have this working group in the Department of European Ethnology in the University of Vienna. It's called Studio Audiovisual Research, and we talked about it for like at least a semester, and it didn't go anywhere. And I think what's like Mihai and Paula said also, like we put also too much positive things in the words like collaboration and I don't know. So there are really negative sides of it also, and we talk maybe very little about it. And
can you give us an example?
For example, I think these films are empowering the filmmakers more than the people represented there. We are here and talking at a conference, you know, so it's like already something plus for us, whereas the participants, they do not kind of profit from this films anymore. At least like I am showing this film since 3 years, you know, and it's made in one week. So I mean, I do not think it's only like, you know, they empowered me maybe, but I do not necessarily think that I am in the position to give like this empowerment to someone.
Yeah, I think in this question of empowerment, I mean, there like a lot plays in there, no? Like kind of also post-colonial relationships between where you as a researcher come from and where you do your work, no? I think in Tera's concept is also interesting because it's quite an educational project, no, paid by like kind of a European university in an African context with the actual goal of like empowering people. So there's always like kind of these like power imbalances, like obviously part of it. But yeah, I find that an interesting way to think of like who empowers whom and how can this actually also be turned around, or how can this be shared? Yeah, Tera.
Well, empowerment was never kind of spelled out in this project, because what the concept I was using was to create an enabling environment. That was kind of the starting point from this. So the empowerment that came out of it, from my point of view, was kind of an added value that it actually worked in that way. But for me, it was more like to create a space for these issues, which is basically silenced in this context, is possible to think and reflect about. So yeah. So if there was empowerment, it was kind of also that the people or the young people were engaging themselves in this. So it was. I don't think I can take actually credit for the empowerment bit of it. But I wanted to create an enabling environment for these kinds of discussions, and that they got more information, and that we could do something together, not just kind of transferring information, but in that sense, I guess I've been working more in health promotion than actually in visual anthropology, but that's another issue.
Yeah, but I feel the gendered aspect is actually very important in your work as well, no? I feel like kind of your actresses, I don't know, but I sometimes even feel they were even more engaged than the boys, or like I felt like there's actually a lot of, you had very strong women in your film, I felt. Yeah, just an observation.
Yeah.
My second and related question would be, maybe if we think about like these larger media discourses about empowering representations of minority or underrepresented people in the media. No, I mean, Netflix and Amazon Studios and all these big companies, or Disney, are doing it in a way where you already feel it's like it becomes this new marketing instrument. No, if you think of like kind of a film like Black Panther that like easily crossed the $1 billion revenue. But then obviously in a lot of sections, like in state TV discussions, representation, like minorities are very often still like kind of talked about, but not talked with. And as this is such a convoluted and big topic nowadays, I keep asking myself what actually we as anthropologists can contribute to these like debates, and what our specific perspective may be. And I wanted to find out if you maybe, because I don't have an answer to this, I thought maybe I just want to find out if one of you maybe has an interesting idea about that. What our role,
Okay. Huge question, sure. I guess it's really interesting to address it. And I think we can learn from small examples. Maybe you talked about Black Panther, that appears in our film with the kids watching Black Panther and talking about them being superheroes and the possibility, like who's who. And it's an interesting scene because one girl from the family, Victoria, concludes that Iron Man is the best because he studied for it. So that's a good principle to take.
He earned it, right?
You earned it. And I mean, the whole experience of this film was very beautiful in the sense that we were the first ones to do a film about their daily lives, and they were acknowledging it, that we were working completely different from television teams and other projects that they were participating on, and they were beneficiaries of it. So they've been involved with like promotional films and stuff like that they just put themselves in a pristine setting, playing the classical instrument and then showing a bit the periphery, and it turns the message, it's completely different from what this film is about. And their reaction to it was very nice, because Bento, the father of the family, said to us, if I were to make an anthropological film, it should be like this. so that gave us a lot of power to, he empowered us, you're doing the right thing. So keep on doing it. The mother also said nowadays that we were screening the film in premiere here in Brazil, and it's an online film festival about musical documentaries. And they are very involved in like promoting, and we intend to make a discussion with them and to integrate them a little bit in the event. And we are sharing this internet platform. We're doing all the promotion work together, So I think it's one way of thinking about it, how to like empower without turning it into a promotional film about a social project, It's more of like the
subtle
approach of how you care about your interlocutors and how you work together?
I think it's a real challenge for those that work with audiovisual and film nowadays, because you have so many information, you have so much media work and takes on things that are actually kind of media washing subjects, right? So you have this hyper-mediated, empowering characters, like trying to get the Black people's attention and money and kind of absorbing their aspirations as social movement. And it ends up in the representation of it, like in the discussion of it, because you're not actually addressing people's lives in a way. You are creating perhaps this, it's like you are creating and fulfilling this wish in a fantasy world, and that should be enough, right? Mm-hmm. So, and you're also depicting these people as super powerful and super amazing, and then that's it. That's the conversation is done. Mm. So I guess the
you turn it into a spectacle, right?
Yeah, but I guess the challenge that it poses for us is to actually show real lives and show real people, and not create characters. That's my point. Like, you're not creating a character that is going to represent anything but who he is and what he is representing for himself. So I guess this is a real challenge, but this is actually what moves things from the status quo that they are in. It's less brilliant. Maybe it's not necessarily brilliant, but it's less glamorous, because you don't have things easy. You have contradictions. And you're going to have things that don't look quite well. And you're sort of thinking that, maybe this is not the ideal, but this ideal thing existing, and is this actually, equivalent to what we want to reach as a society? I don't know. I think the challenge is to really get to people and show real life, show real people.
That's a very good answer to my question.
Yeah, I think that.
So I think that in my case, the empowerment actually goes the other way. It's like a reverse empowerment, because basically what I'm trying to do with my research is that I want to find out another way to look at how desire is connected to sexual identity. Because in the society where I live, sexual identity is so static and so important to people, and it is seen as something inborn and something like a truth that you can reveal. And to learn from my research participants another way to look at this, where people, who are not in the film, for example, but married family fathers who like shorta, or married women who like shorta, and who use it in various ways without any fear that might say anything about their sexual identity. So, Stefan, you also asked if I had a political motive and so on, and maybe that is it, that I want to complicate the picture that exists in other parts of the world.
Yeah, I think complicating the picture is always something we as anthropologists can and should strive for. Is there any other answers? If not, is there any questions from the audience? If we do have an audience, I'm not so sure. Then if not, I think we have like about 10 minutes left. Maybe we close by doing a quick round about what is next for all of you guys. I would be really interested in what did you take from making a project that in some way dealt with the issue of empowerment? What worked for you, what didn't work? What would you do differently next time? And how all of this will impact your next project, and maybe what your next project, if you already have one in mind, will be about. Maybe, if you don't mind, we do a quick goodbye round with these questions. Who wants to start? Zainab.
Yeah, I can't talk about a specific project, but I can tell you about my personal concerns nowadays. I am thinking about preserving a sustainable atmosphere for storytelling. I mean, by sustainable, I don't mean UN SDG, Sustainable Development Goals, but having a democratic and non-hierarchical perspective for also our subjects, and going beyond the classical structure of the story, because especially after this post-COVID days, we are very much engaged in virtual interactive settings that we are like being part of the story rather than watching it in a passive way. So I am trying to look at these discussions. For example, in documentary film studies, there are some pioneer filmmakers and scholars like Alexandra Juhas and Alisa Lebov. Now they are doing some workshops on storytelling. It is called Beyond Stories. So I find them very useful in terms of finding a kind of more updated, more refreshed kind of telling the stories. I mean, what Ishil said was very important. She said they are the ones who are empowering us. So, I mean, sometimes our interlocutors or our characters, unfortunately, don't have the chance to see our films that we that where the center of the theme, where the main character are them. So maybe we must find some ways to make them the filmmakers themselves rather than telling their stories. I mean, so this sustainability issue is in my mind, and I guess I can try to make something like VR experience, VR documentaries. I'm trying to think about something which can have this kind of structure, both interactive and have lots of authors rather than one director, and something like this. I hope I answered your question, but I cannot talk about a specific project.
Who goes next?
I can.
Yes.
I'm involved in a project, a next project on refugees in Eritrean refugees in Ethiopia, and I'm actually thinking again to use some of the experiences from this youth project to work on young refugees in. Basically, I had thought about doing this in North Ethiopia in the refugee camps, but now there is a war going on, so it will not be possible. But there are also a lot of refugees in Addis Ababa, in the capital city, so I will try to do it there. But because of the political situation, it will be a challenge to actually be allowed to film, to do a visual project. Even research is more difficult to do now in the current political situation. So I hope I will kind of find a way around it by working with the local people who are actually making films and doing dramas.
Drama and theater again, yeah?
Yeah, drama and theater, but then also kind of maybe mixing it with interviews. I mean, I'm also thinking about maybe these two things can also be tied together in a way. I mean, this participant film is not kind of a very new in its form, but maybe it's possible to integrate those things in a new way. Yeah. So we'll see.
Ijil, do you want to go next?
Sure. My biggest project at the moment is my PhD project. And
what is it about?
I'm researching in analog artist-run film labs. Like there are many labs in Europe who are working with analog filmmaking tools and like kind of taking the abundant tools and making films with them in a collective way. And I'm writing an ethnography on it and making also like field recordings and a lot of sounds of technology and so on and so forth. And I have a music video project and documentary film project, but they're really in the beginning. Also, I wanted to say, if you would like to at least join to the mailing list of our studio audiovisual research, I think it would be really great to have you there, at least like have some kind of like, events that you would like, then I will write my email on the chat. Yeah.
Sure. Paula and Michal?
Yeah, we are working on projects in different levels. I think I am finishing, I'm actually in the middle of my PhD, so I'm also tangled up with the continuation of this project that resulted in this film, that is actually on a multi-sited ethnography that intends to kind of investigate these forms of empowerment in different projects, social projects that want to work through music to develop their areas. So I am studying this network of projects that is spread in Brazil. And I intend to make a series of ethnographic films on each of these projects and do it like in a geolocalized idea of how these practices are actually building differently and engaging in different communities in different manners, but also their own issues with this idea of development and with a developmental agenda. So the idea is to do that until the end of my PhD. I hope I will manage to film, because I actually haven't been able to go there places as the pandemic is still going wild in Brazil. So I keep doing it in a local way, but the idea is to go through this network with this actor network theory background. So, and we're also working on a project following Mihai's research and his postdoctoral research.
I guess it's worth saying that we're both part of this bigger thematic project called Local Musicking, creating new pathways for ethnomusicology, based at the University of São Paulo. And it's a fantastic project, and with many colleagues developing lots of interesting directions and takes on ethnomusicology and research that deal with music in general. And my research is dealing with the electronic music scene here in São Paulo, that obviously stopped during the pandemic, but fortunately I've filmed and made my research before, and now I'm like kind of collaboratively with Paula and other people and artists and visual artists, performers from the scene. I'm developing this film series of 7 episodes, 25 minutes each, and we are also developing from this film series another feature film, hopefully, about 3 drag queens here in São Paulo. And that's a collaborative story, told story that is done with the help of like video diaries, in distancing times. And also we are right now organizing this workshop with them, going together on the beach in a house and do some laboratory of experimentations there.
Kind of performance
so
residency.
We don't know how this will come out, but probably next year we will have some more things to show.
Cool. And Carl?
Yeah, and me, I will continue my Shota research during a PhD at the School of Arts, Languages and Cultures at the University of Manchester. And that starts now in September. So I am, nothing more to say about that. But it's a PhD in Japanese studies, by the way, not in anthropology. So I will bring my ethnographic methods in there.
Mm-hmm. But will you do another film, or will you expand that film? Or?
I'm open for everything. It's first of all, I want to actually write a book about Shota, but after I have written my dissertation. So yeah, it will be a primarily text-based PhD, I think, but I will continue to make films nevertheless.
Okay. Cool. Thanks a lot to everybody. Thanks a lot for your amazing project. Sounds very interesting what you're planning on now. And I hope we continue the conversation. I hope we keep in touch. I hope we see what kind of. I'm really interested in where all you guys are going with your next project. And thank you very much for joining.
Thank you.
What about you, Stefan?
Well,
I was going to ask the same thing. We haven't heard about you.
Right. So I just got back from fieldwork in Havana, where I work about like offline media culture and like offline media distribution networks. I have a lot of projects that are still like kind of in post-production. I made an ethnographic video game that is a business simulator of El Paquete Semanal, which is like kind of the Cuban offline version of the internet. It's kind of a 1 terabyte hard drive with all the latest Netflix shows and Turkish telenovelas, Brazilian telenovelas, Japanese anime. Like actually Cuban people are obsessed with all of these genres. And there's this very elaborate distribution network that you can actually subscribe to that 1 terabyte data collection once a week, and then somebody brings it to your home, and you have 24 hours to copy everything until he or she takes the hard drive back. And this exists in every single corner of the island. And that's a bit my research topic, like kind of offline distribution in Cuba. And I have a video game that is a business simulator that simulates that. I just finished editing a documentary film about like kind of Havana's first generation of YouTubers. And I'm working on a video installation, which is like kind of a cyberpunk science fiction story, like kind of a remake of a William Gibson short story from the 80s, Johnny Mnemonic in the Cuban context. But this is all stuff that is still ongoing, that I'm still working on. And I hope I get some of it finished this year. Thanks. Okay, so I would say we end here. If you participate in the rest of the conference, in other talks, enjoy. I will definitely try to do so. I think we have 2.5 more days left. And keep in touch.
Nice meeting you all.
Thank you so much.
Nice meeting you.
Congratulations.
Thank you so much.